The rain wasn't washing me clean. It was drowning the person I thought I was. My legs burned, muscles screaming as my shoes slapped against flooding pavement. The storm had turned the city into a watercolor nightmare, neon signs bleeding pink and gold into puddles that reflected a version of myself I didn't recognize. Behind me, Jean Woo's voice cut through the downpour, smooth and practiced, the tone of a concerned friend. Sasha, please. You're confused. The medication. You're not thinking clearly. But I was thinking clearly. For the first time in 8 months, the fog had lifted just enough to see the bars of my cage. The tracking app I'd found on my phone. The way he always appeared at coffee shops I'd never told him about. The locked drawer in his apartment I wasn't supposed to notice. The way my body reacted to certain streets in the city, muscle memory of a life I couldn't access, like phantom limbs reaching for something that had been amputated from my mind. My side cramped, vicious and sharp. I pushed through it. Ahead, maybe 40 feet through the rain-soaked haze, I spotted Salvation, the Onyx Lounge. Elegant script barely visible through the storm, but amber light spilled from its windows like liquid gold, promising warmth, witnesses, safety. Closed. It looked closed. The kind of place where membership cost more than my yearly income, where someone like me, soaked, terrified, ordinary, didn't belong. I didn't care. 30 feet. I could hear Jean Woo's footsteps, not frantic, but deliberate. The pace of someone hurting, not chasing. You're having an episode, Sasha. Let me help you. 20 feet. That was the problem, wasn't it? I'd let him help me. Let him become my emergency contact, my medication manager, the only person who understood my condition. 10 feet. 5. My hands hit the brass handle. Once, twice, slipping on rain-slicked metal before finding purchase. The door swung open with surprising ease, as if it had been waiting for me. I crashed inside and slammed it behind me, my wet fingers fumbling the bolt until it slid home with a sound like a coffin ceiling. Brief channel break. Optional meta moment. Welcome back, lovers of dangerous men and women who refuse to break. If you're new here, subscribe and let me know in the comments what drew you to the story. Was it the Mafia Boss? The memory loss? The betrayal? Every like, every share helps us keep bringing you these dark, delicious tales. Now let's see who's been waiting for Sasha. The silence inside was absolute.
Wrong.
Please, I gasped, spinning to face the room, my voice raw. There's a man outside. He's been following me. I just need. The words died. The Onyx Lounge wasn't a bar. It was a war room disguised as luxury. Dark wood panels climbed to high ceilings. Shelves of liquor bottles that probably cost more than cars gleamed like trophies. The leather seating was the color of old blood, arranged not for comfort, but for strategic sightlines. Low amber lighting created pockets of shadow where 2 men in dark suits stood with the stillness of trained soldiers. The air tasted of aged whiskey, cigarette smoke, and something else, something that made my pulse spike with a fear that felt dangerously close to anticipation. 3 men total, all watching me with the predatory patience of apex predators interrupted during a kill. Their suits were custom, their faces carved from violence and discipline. One had his hand resting inside his jacket, the universal gesture of a man with a weapon and permission to use it. But it was the 4th man who destroyed what remained of my sanity. He sat in a leather chair against the back wall, one leg crossed over the other with aristocratic ease. A crystal glass of whiskey balanced in long, elegant fingers. He didn't startle at my entrance like the others. Instead, he moved with deliberate, lethal grace, setting down his glass with surgical precision before rising to his full height.
Tall.
Easily 6'2", maybe more. broader than Jinwoo but leaner, the build of someone who trained for function, not appearance. He wore a black suit that had been tailored by someone who understood that clothing could be both armor and weapon. The jacket sat perfectly across shoulders that promised controlled violence.
No tie.
The top button of his black shirt was undone, revealing the edge of ink, a dragon's tail coiling up from his chest toward his throat. His face could have been sculpted by someone with a vendetta against softness.
Sharp jaw.
High, severe cheekbones. A straight nose. A fresh cut traced his left cheek, the kind of wound that was hours old, still healing. Evidence of recent violence worn like a badge. And his eyes.
God, his eyes.
Dark, nearly black in the amber light. They locked onto me with an intensity that made Jinwoo's obsession seem like casual interest. This man looked at me the way a wolf studies territory it already owns. Not with desperation, with certainty. When he moved closer, the dragon tattoo on his neck seemed to breathe. Something in my chest cracked wide open. Not fear. Recognition. The bang on the door behind me made my entire body jerk. I pressed harder against the wood, feeling it shudder as Jinwoo pounded from outside. Sasha. His voice was sharp with manufactured panic. Sasha, you're not safe in there. You don't know what you're doing.
Come out. Now.
The two suited men shifted in perfect synchronization, hands moving toward concealed weapons. But the dark-haired man simply tilted his head, his gaze sliding from me to the door behind me, then back to my face. Something flickered in those black eyes. Not surprise. Not concern. Satisfaction. He glanced at his wrist, at a watch that was platinum and precise, the kind that cost as much as a luxury car, and a smile touched his lips. Not warm. Not comforting. The smile of a predator who'd been waiting for prey to spring the trap. You're 3 minutes late, Sasha, he said. His voice matched everything else about him. Deep, controlled, with an undertone of danger that made every nerve in my body stand at attention. It rolled through the space like distant thunder, a warning of a storm I was already inside. My mind fractured. 3 minutes late. Late for what? I'd never been here before. I'd never seen this place. I didn't know this man. But my body knew him. My body went still in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with coming home. My pulse slowed instead of racing. My breathing deepened, like a wounded animal finally finding its den. My hands, which had been shaking, steadied. I don't. I started, but he was already moving toward me. He walked with the fluid, purposeful grace of something apex and patient, closing the distance between us until he stood close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Smell the intoxicating scent of his cologne, something dark, woody, and expensive that wrapped around me like smoke. He reached past me. For a moment, I thought he was going to open the door, throw me back to Jinwoo, but instead his hand settled on the bolt, ensuring it stayed locked. His voice dropped lower, meant only for me. Breathe, Sasha. You're safe now. Outside, Jinwoo's pounding grew more frantic. Inside, this stranger, this dangerous, beautiful stranger, looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking for a very long time. And my traitorous body believed him. Before we dive deeper into this story, take a moment to hit that like button if you love suspenseful, emotional stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next thrilling chapter. We also want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Whether it's your city, your country, or even just your favorite spot to watch these stories, we love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's get back to the story and see just how far courage can take someone when danger is closing in. The stranger's hand moved from the bolt to my wrist. Not grabbing, guiding. His touch was warm, firm, and sent electricity racing up my arm in a way that made no biological sense. I should have pulled away. Instead, my body leaned into the contact like a flower turning toward sun it had been denied. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the leather chair he'd vacated. "You're shaking." I was. But not from cold. Not anymore.
Who are you?
The question came out barely above a whisper. He studied me for a long moment, those dark eyes cataloging every detail of my face with an intensity that felt like being read in a language I'd forgotten how to speak. Then he moved to a side table, poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a clean glass, and returned, pressing it into my hands. "Drink first. Then we'll talk about what you've forgotten." I haven't forgotten anything. But even as I said it, my fingers wrapped around the glass with muscle memory that knew exactly how much pressure to apply to crystal this expensive. My body knew things my mind refused to accept. He settled into the chair across from me, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. The dragon on his neck seemed to watch me with the same intensity as its wearer. Behind him, the 2 suited men remained motionless, but their attention had shifted from threat assessment to something else. Anticipation. "Your name is Sasha," he began, his voice low and controlled. "But 8 months ago, you were someone else. Someone very different." "I know my own name." My hand tightened on the glass. "I know who I am." "Do you?" He tilted his head slightly. "Tell me about your childhood. Your family. The scar on your left shoulder blade. How did you get it?" I opened my mouth. Closed it. The scar. I knew I had a scar there. I'd seen it in mirrors, felt it under my fingers in the shower. But the story behind it, the memory was there, and not there like trying to grab smoke. Jean Wu said I was in an accident. Before we met. Jean Wu is a handler. The words were flat, factual, devastating. He works for the Choi clan. His job was to keep you contained, medicated, and compliant while they extracted information from what remains of your memory. The room tilted.
No.
He's been helping me. The medication helps with the medication is keeping you sedated. He leaned forward, and I could smell him again. That dark, expensive scent that made something deep in my hindbrain purr with recognition. "The headaches aren't a disorder, Sasha. They're your mind fighting to remember what you chose to erase." That's insane. But my voice cracked on the word. He reached into his jacket, slowly, deliberately, giving me time to process, and withdrew a phone. Not his. The case was familiar. Pink marble.
My case.
The phone I'd lost 2 weeks ago. "How did you?" "You didn't lose it. You left it. Hidden in our apartment before you ran." He unlocked it with a fingerprint that shouldn't have worked but did, and turned the screen toward me. "You left yourself a message. Insurance, in case something went wrong." The video showed a woman who looked like me, but not. Her hair was different, shorter, sharper. Her eyes held an edge that mine lacked, a predatory awareness that made her seem like a completely different species. She wore black, tactical and fitted, and behind her I could see a room I didn't recognize. Expensive.
Modern. Safe.
When she spoke, her voice was my voice, but colder, more certain. "If you're watching this, the procedure worked. You won't remember recording this. You won't remember who you were. That was the point." She paused, and something almost like regret flickered across her features. "Your name was Ghost. You were the best intelligence operative the Soul Syndicate ever produced. You could disappear into any identity, extract any information, eliminate any target. You were untouchable." My hands started shaking. The whiskey sloshed in the glass. 3 months ago, you stole files that could destroy every major player in the syndicate. You were going to use them as leverage to get out. To save. She stopped, swallowed hard. To save the man you married. But the Choi clan found out. They sent handlers. Assassins. So you did the only thing that could protect both of you and the evidence. Her eyes, my eyes, stared directly into the camera with devastating clarity. You erased yourself, burned ghost out of your own mind, and became someone ordinary. Someone they'd never look at twice. Someone who couldn't tell them where the files were even under torture, because she genuinely didn't know. The video ended. The silence in the room was absolute. I looked up at the stranger. At the man who'd been watching me with ownership and something deeper. Something that looked dangerously close to grief. You said you were married. I whispered. You said the man you married. He held my gaze, unflinching. We've been married for 2 years, Sasha. My name is Kyungjin Park. And whether you remember me or not. He reached out, his fingers brushing my jaw with devastating gentleness. My pulse slowed under his touch, my breathing deepened, my body surrendering to a truth my mind still fought. Your body does. Outside, Jin-woo had stopped pounding. But I could feel him out there, waiting. Inside, my husband, this stranger who wasn't a stranger, watched me with eyes that had seen me die and be reborn into someone who didn't know his name. The headaches, I managed. When do they happen? When you get close to remembering. When your mind fights the erasure. His thumb traced my cheekbone. They'll get worse before they get better. But I can help you through it. Why should I trust you?
His smile was sad, knowing.
You shouldn't. Trust is something you earn with memory. But your body already knows what your mind is still learning. He stood, offering his hand. The Choi clan will come for you tonight. Jin-woo was stalling until they arrived. We need to move. I stared at his outstretched hand. At the man claiming to be my husband. At the door behind me where my supposed savior waited to drag me back to a cage I'd been too sedated to recognize. My mind screamed stranger, danger, run. My body reached for him, like coming home. His fingers closed around mine, warm, certain, possessive, and he pulled me to my feet with the effortless strength of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. The two suited men moved immediately, flanking us as Kyungjin guided me toward a back exit I hadn't noticed, hidden behind a panel of dark wood that slid open at his approach. The car is waiting, one of them said, his voice low and efficient. But Kyungjin shook his head. Not yet. She needs to see first. She needs to understand why she ran. He led me up a narrow staircase, his hand never leaving mine. My legs moved automatically, following him through hallways that smelled of expensive wood polish and old money. We stopped at a door. He unlocked it with a key he wore on a chain around his neck, close to his heart, and gestured me inside. The room was small, private, a study, maybe, or a sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, filled with volumes in Korean and English. A desk sat near the window, and on it, a single photograph in a silver frame. I moved toward it like a sleepwalker. The woman in the photograph wore red. Not the soft, romantic red of Valentine's, but the red of arterial blood, of warning signs, of danger dressed in silk. The dress was fitted, elegant, with a neckline that suggested rather than revealed. Her hair was pinned up, exposing a neck I recognized as mine. She stood in front of what looked like a courthouse, stone steps and columns behind her, and beside her, Kyungjin. Younger, maybe. Or perhaps just less haunted. He wore a black suit, no tie, his hand resting on her lower back with easy ownership. They weren't smiling for the camera. They were smiling at each other, And the intimacy in that look made my chest ache with loss for something I couldn't remember losing. That was 2 years ago, Kyung-jin said softly behind me. Seoul Metropolitan Courthouse. 3 p.m. on a Thursday. You wore red because I told you I hated traditional wedding white. You said it looked like surrender. My fingers traced the frame. I don't remember this. I know. His voice carried an edge of something raw, quickly controlled. You made sure you wouldn't. He moved to the desk, opened a drawer, and withdrew a manila envelope. The kind that held secrets and evidence. He set it on the desk between us, then stepped back, giving me space to decide. I opened it with shaking hands. More photographs spilled out. Me in that red dress from different angles. Me and Kyung-jin signing papers, his hand covering mine on the pen. Me laughing at something he'd whispered, my hand on his chest, his lips near my ear. The casual intimacy of people who knew each other's bodies better than their own. But it was the last photograph that destroyed me. Same red dress. Same courthouse steps. But this one was different. I was turned away from the camera, standing on tiptoe, and Kyung-jin was kissing me. Not the polite kiss of a public wedding. The desperate kiss of two people who'd found something worth dying for in a world built on death. You kept your maiden name professionally, he continued, his voice carefully neutral. Ghost didn't need a husband's name. But in private, you were mine. Park Sasha. You'd whisper it sometimes, late at night, testing how it sounded. I couldn't breathe.
Couldn't think.
The photographs were evidence, undeniable and devastating, of a life I'd lived and lost. Why? The word came out broken. Why would I erase this? Erase you? Kyung-jin was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old pain, carefully controlled. Because you found out the truth about my father. He moved to stand beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. His gaze fixed on the wedding photograph, on the version of himself that hadn't yet learned what love could cost. My father is Minjun Park. He's the head of the Park clan, one of the 5 families that control the Seoul Syndicate Council. Powerful, respected, feared. He paused. And he's been selling syndicate intelligence to the Japanese Yakuza for 3 years. The words fell like stones into still water, ripples spreading. You discovered it by accident. You were running an operation, tracking a leak in the council's security network, and the trail led back to him. You brought me the evidence because you thought, his jaw tightened. You thought I'd want to handle it quietly.
Protect the family name.
Make the problem disappear. But you didn't want that. I could hear it in his voice, the fury barely leashed. I wanted to kill him. The words were flat, factual, terrifying in their honesty. He'd betrayed everything. The council, the syndicate,
Me.
He'd put you in danger by creating instability. I was going to put a bullet in his head myself and let the council sort out the succession. He turned to face me fully, and I saw it then. The fresh cut on his cheek, the tension in his shoulders, the careful control of a man still fighting the urge to commit patricide. You stopped me. You said killing him would start a war, that the other families would see it as weakness, that they'd come for us both. You said there was another way. His hand lifted, hovering near my face but not quite touching. You said you'd steal the evidence, every file, every transaction, every name, that you'd use it as leverage to force him out quietly and protect me from the fallout. But something went wrong. The Choi clan found out what you'd taken. Madame Choi, he said the name like a curse. She wanted those files, wanted the leverage for herself. She sent her best people after you. Hunters, assassins. She gave you a choice, hand over the files and die quickly, or run and die slowly while they extracted the information. I stared at the woman in the red dress, at the ghost who'd been capable of making impossible choices. So, I chose option 3. You chose option 3, he confirmed. You came to me, told me you loved me too much to let me become a kinslayer. That you'd found a specialist, someone who could erase specific memories, identities, skills. You said you'd burn ghost out of your own mind, become someone ordinary, someone the Choi clan would never look at twice. You said the files would be safe because even under torture, you couldn't reveal what you genuinely didn't know. His voice cracked on the last word. I begged you not to do it. Told you we'd run, disappear, burn it all down together. But you, he smiled, sad and proud. You kissed me. You told me you'd rather forget loving me than watch me destroy myself. And then you walked into that clinic and erased 2 years of our life like they'd never happened. The room was too small, too full of ghosts I couldn't remember being. The files, I whispered. Where are they? Kyungjin's smile turned predatory. That's what we need you to remember. Kyungjin's smile turned predatory. That's what we need you to remember. The car was black, bulletproof, and moved through Seoul's streets like a shark through dark water. I sat in the back beside Kyungjin, the 2 suited men in front, and watched the city blur past tinted windows. Rain still fell, softer now, turning neon signs into abstract art against the night. My hand rested on the seat between us. Kyungjin's finger traced the edge of my palm, not holding, just touching, as if reminding my skin of something my mind had forgotten. The gesture should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like breathing. Where are we going? I asked, though part of me already knew. Could feel it in the way my body relaxed as we climbed higher into the city's affluent heart. Home. The word was simple, weighted with everything unsaid. The building rose 40 stories into the Seoul skyline, all glass and steel and money. The private elevator required a keycard and a fingerprint. Kyungjin's thumb pressed to the scanner with practiced ease. As we ascended, my ears popped. My pulse should have quickened with anxiety. Instead, it steadied like my body recognized the altitude, the sensation, the destination. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. I stepped out and stopped breathing. Floor-to-ceiling windows dominated 3 walls, offering a panoramic view of Seoul that glittered like scattered diamonds on black velvet. The space was open, modern, expensive in a way that didn't announce itself. It simply was. Dark hardwood floors. Minimalist furniture in blacks and grays. Art on the walls that was probably worth more than most people's homes. But it was the small details that destroyed me. A telescope stood near the eastern window, pointed toward the sky. Professional grade, the kind astronomers used, completely at odds with the sleek, masculine aesthetic of everything else. I moved toward it like a magnet finding north, my fingers wrapping around the barrel with muscle memory that knew exactly how to adjust the focus. You'd spend hours with that thing, Kyungjin said softly behind me. Mapping constellations. You said it helped you think. That looking at something infinite made human problems feel manageable. I pulled my hand back as if burned. On the wall near the telescope, framed sketches hung in a neat row. Charcoal drawings, precise and detailed. A woman's hands holding a coffee cup. The curve of a cat's spine. The Seoul skyline at dawn. The style was confident, observational, the work of someone who noticed everything and forgot nothing. I drew these. Every Sunday morning. You said it kept your hand steady for other work. He didn't need to specify what other work. The kind that required steady hands and no hesitation. I moved deeper into the penthouse, drawn by instinct to a door slightly ajar. The bedroom. The bed was made with military precision, but on the nightstand, I saw it. A book, spine cracked from repeated reading. Poetry. Rilke. A sticky note marked a page, and in handwriting I recognized as mine. This one. Read it to me when I can't sleep. My chest tightened. The closet was walk-in, organized with the efficiency of someone who treated clothing as tools. But on my side, because it was clearly my side, the scent of my perfume still lingering faintly in the fabric, I found pieces that didn't match the tactical wardrobe. A soft gray sweater, running shoes worn smooth at the heels, a silk robe in deep blue. I pulled the robe out, held it to my face. It smelled like me and something else. Him.
Us.
You'd steal my shirts, Kyung-jin said from the doorway, his voice carrying an ache he couldn't quite hide. Said they smelled like safety. But you kept that robe here because I bought it for you. Said the color matched your eyes when you were plotting something dangerous. I hung the robe back carefully, my hands shaking. Why does this feel like visiting a grave? Because the woman who lived here died. And the woman standing in front of me doesn't know if she wants to resurrect her. I turned to face him. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching me with an expression that was equal parts hope and resignation. The fresh cut on his cheek had stopped bleeding, but the wound was still raw, a reminder that the violence I'd tried to escape was still very much alive. Jinwoo, I said, the name bitter on my tongue. When did he find me? Kyung-jin's expression darkened. 6 months ago. You'd been living under your new identity for 2 months by then, working at that cafe, living in that apartment with the broken heating. He approached you as a customer. Friendly. Concerned. He built the relationship slowly, exactly the way a handler is trained to do. But I thought I was ordinary. How did they find me? Because someone told them where to look. He pushed off the doorframe, moved to the window, his silhouette outlined against the city lights. After you erased yourself, I kept watch from a distance. Made sure you were safe. Made sure no one got close. But 3 months in, I had to handle a situation in Busan. Family business. I was gone for 4 days. His hands clenched into fists. When I came back, you'd already been tagged. Jinwoo had made contact. I saw him at your cafe, saw the way he looked at you, like an asset, not a person.
I wanted to kill him then.
Should have. But I needed to know what he knew, who sent him, how deep the betrayal went. So you watched him manipulate me. The accusation hung between us. I watched him try. Kyung-jin turned to face me. But something was wrong. He reported back to the Choi clan that the erasure was complete, that you were exactly what you appeared to be. Ordinary, vulnerable, accessible. But then he stopped filing reports. Started going off script. The medications he gave you weren't the ones Madam Choi authorized. Understanding clicked into place like a weapon being loaded. He went rogue. He developed feelings. Genuine ones. Or as genuine as a sociopath can manage. Kyung-jin's voice dripped with contempt. He wanted to keep you for himself. Told Madam Choi the trail had gone cold, that you died or fled the country. But he kept you close, kept you medicated just enough to be dependent, but not so much that you'd be useless. He was building his own cage for you. And then he sold me out. 2 weeks ago, Madam Choi discovered his deception. She gave him an ultimatum, deliver you and the location of the files or die. So Jinwoo made his choice. Kyung-jin's smile was cold, predatory. He chose wrong. Because you were already starting to remember. The headaches, the muscle memory, the way your body reacted to certain streets in the city. Ghost was clawing her way back. And tonight she ran. I looked around the penthouse, at the artifacts of a life I'd lived and lost. The telescope, the sketches, the robe that smelled like safety. This wasn't just evidence. It was a monument to a woman who'd loved someone enough to die for him. The files, I whispered. You said I hid them. That even you don't know where. Kyung-jin crossed the room, stopped close enough that I could feel his heat, smell that dark, expensive scent that made my hindbrain purr with recognition. You told me they were safe. That when the time was right, I'd understand where to look. His hand lifted, fingers brushing my temple, where a headache was beginning to build. You said I'd know you better than you knew yourself. That my love would be the map. The headache spiked, sharp and vicious. I gasped, and Kyung-jin caught me, steadied me, held me against his chest while the pain crested and broke. And in the breaking I saw it, a flash of memory, vivid and clear.
Ink.
Scales. A dragon breathing fire up his throat. Your tattoo. I breathed. The answer is in your tattoo. The headache didn't fade. It transformed, sharpening from diffuse pain into something precise and surgical, like a scalpel cutting through scar tissue to expose what had been buried beneath. I pulled back from Kyung-jin's chest, my hands gripping his shoulders for balance. The dragon. I need to see it. All of it. He searched my face, looking for something, confirmation, perhaps, that ghost was clawing her way back to the surface. Whatever he saw made him nod. Without hesitation, he shrugged out of his suit jacket, let it fall to the floor. His fingers moved to his shirt buttons with practiced efficiency. The dragon revealed itself inch by ink-dark inch. It started at his collarbone, the tail coiling across his right shoulder before the body emerged, scales rendered in exquisite detail, each one shaded to create depth and dimension. The creature wound around his torso, muscular and serpentine, its body twisting across his ribs, across his heart. The head emerged at his left shoulder, mouth open, breathing fire up the column of his throat. The artistry was breathtaking, traditional Korean style merged with something more modern, more personal. But it was the scales that held my attention. My fingers moved without conscious thought, tracing the pattern across his chest. Kyung-jin's breath hitched at the contact, but he remained still, a statue allowing itself to be read. There, I whispered, my fingertips stopping on a scale near his heart. This one is different. It was subtle, so subtle that anyone else would have missed it. But the scale wasn't quite the same shade as its neighbors. The outline was fractionally thicker, and inside, almost invisible unless you knew to look, was a letter. A single character.
K.
My headache intensified, and with it came a flash of memory. Not complete, not whole, but enough. Me, sitting cross-legged on a bed I recognized as the one in the other room. Kyung-jin, shirtless, lying on his stomach while I traced patterns on his back. My voice, amused and affectionate. Hold still. I need to make sure I get this right. You're mapping a treasure hunt on my body, his voice responded from the memory, warm with laughter. I'm making sure that the only person who could ever find what matters most is the person who knows you best. A pause.
Me.
I'm making sure only I can find it, or someone who loves you the way I do. The memory fractured, slipped away, but the knowledge remained. There are more, I said, my hand moving across his ribs, finding another altered scale. Another character. C. Then another. 7. Letters and numbers. Hidden in the scales. A code. Kyung-jin's voice was rough when he spoke. How many? I don't know. I need to see all of it. I stepped back, gesturing for him to turn. The dragon's body continued across his back, coiling down his spine. More scales. More hidden characters, scattered across the creature's form with no apparent pattern. My fingers traced each one, committing them to memory even as another headache spike brought with it a cascade of fragmented images. A laptop screen, files downloading. My hands, moving with swift precision across a keyboard. Kyung-jin, sleeping in the bed behind me, trusting me enough to be vulnerable. My voice, barely a whisper. I'm sorry, but this is the only way to keep you safe from your own loyalty. I stepped back, my mental map complete. 23 scales. 23 characters hidden in plain sight across the most intimate canvas possible, his body. The body I'd known well enough to mark, to trust with secrets even I wouldn't be able to access. They form coordinates, I said, the knowledge surfacing like muscle memory. And an access code. Split into 3 parts. Geographic location, facility number, vault designation. Kyung-jin turned to face me, his expression unreadable. Where? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed.
Once. Twice.
3 times in rapid succession. The pattern of an emergency alert. He grabbed it from his discarded jacket, and I watched his face darken as he read. What is it? The council has issued a formal hunt order. He looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd crashed into the Onyx Lounge, I saw something close to fear in his eyes. They've authorized lethal force. The bounty is 5 million won for information leading to your location. 50 million for your capture. 100 million for the files. My stomach dropped. That's enough to turn everyone in the syndicate into a hunter. That's the point. He moved to the window, looking out at the city that had suddenly become enemy territory. Madame Choi is escalating. She's gambling that someone, a soldier, a lieutenant, even family, will sell you out for that kind of money. How long do we have? Hours. Maybe less. He turned back to me. The files. Where are they? I closed my eyes, let the headache guide me through the fragments of memory. The characters from his tattoo rearranged themselves in my mind, forming patterns, meaning, location. Incheon, I said. There's a private storage facility near the port. Old money, established families, the kind of place that doesn't ask questions if you pay enough. The coordinates point to Section C, Vault 743. I open my eyes. But the access code. It's not just numbers. What is it? Biometric. It requires a fingerprint and a retinal scan. I swallowed hard against the implications.
Mine. Ghosts.
The woman I used to be before the erasure. Kyung-jin's jaw tightened. The erasure changed your neural patterns, but not your biometrics. Your fingerprints are the same. Your retinas are the same. Then we can get to it. Not we. You. He crossed the room, gripped my shoulders gently but firmly. The moment I'm seen with you, the council will know. They'll send everything they have. But you're still under the radar. Jin Woo reported you dead or gone. If you move carefully, if you move now, you can retrieve the files before they realize you've resurfaced. You want me to go alone? The idea was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I want you to survive. His hands moved to cup my face, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. I'll create a distraction. Draw the hunters east while you go, west to Incheon. My men will provide support from a distance, but they won't be obvious. You'll have a 2-hour window, maybe 3. And if something goes wrong? His smile was dark, predatory, the expression of a man who'd built an empire on calculated violence. Then I'll burn the entire syndicate to the ground to get you back. Council, clans, my own father, it won't matter. They'll learn what happens when they hunt what's mine. The possessiveness should have frightened me. Instead, it steadied something deep in my core, the part of me that Ghost had been, the part that understood love and violence weren't opposites but sides of the same coin. There's something else, I said, the memory solidifying even as I spoke it. The files aren't just evidence against your father. They contain records on every council member, every dirty deal, every betrayal, every body buried. It's leverage against the entire power structure, which is why they'll kill to get it back. And why we'll use it to rewrite the rules. I stepped closer, close enough to feel his heartbeat against my palms. I didn't just hide insurance, Kyung-jin. I hid a weapon. One powerful enough to take down the council or bend it to our will. His eyes darkened with understanding and something that looked dangerously close to pride. You were always thinking 3 moves ahead. I had to be. I was protecting the one thing I couldn't afford to lose. My hand pressed over his heart, over the dragon that held secrets in its scales. You.
He kissed me then.
Not gentle, not careful, but with the desperate certainty of a man reclaiming something he'd thought lost forever. And my body responded with recognition my mind was still learning, melting into him like coming home to a place I'd forgotten existed. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. Go get our weapon, Ghost. And come back to me. The private shooting range was underground, 3 levels beneath a legitimate gun club that catered to Seoul's elite. Soundproofed walls, climate-controlled, the kind of place where no questions were asked as long as the membership fees were paid in cash. Kyung-jin had insisted I test myself before going to Incheon. You need to know what's still there, he'd said. What Ghost left behind when she burned herself out. Now I stood in lane 7, a Glock 19 in my hands, feeling the weight of it like greeting an old friend whose name I'd forgotten. The stance is wrong, one of Kyung-jin's men said from behind the glass partition. He was the older one, sharp features, watchful eyes. She's holding it like someone who took a weekend course, not. My body moved before my mind caught up. The weapon rose. My feet shifted into a modified Weaver stance. My breathing steadied. 3 shots. Center mass on the target 25 meters downrange. Tight grouping. Professional. Then I pivoted, engaged the second target at 15 meters. 2 shots, both headshots. Pivoted again, third target at 30 meters through a narrow gap in the partition wall. Single shot.
Clean.
The entire sequence took 4 seconds. Silence filled the observation room behind me. I lowered the weapon, my hands steady, my pulse calm. My conscious mind hadn't decided to shoot. My body had simply remembered how. That's not possible, the younger guard whispered. The erasure should have taken the muscle memory. The neural pathways. We're too deep to fully erase, Kyung-jin said, his voice carrying satisfaction and something darker. Ghost wasn't just an identity. She was architecture built into bone and reflex. You can burn the blueprint, but the foundation remains. I set the Glock down carefully, staring at my hands. Hands that knew how to kill with precision I couldn't consciously access. What else can I do? We'll find out. Kyung-jin entered the range, moved to stand beside me. But this is enough to know you can handle yourself in Incheon. The skills are there. They're just waiting for the right trigger. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then handed it to me. It's for you. The message was from an unknown number, but I knew who it was before I finished reading the first line. Sasha, I know you're with him. I know he's told you everything. But there's one thing he doesn't know. One thing you hid even from yourself. The child. Our son. They have him. If you want him to live, you'll bring me the files. Alone. You have 24 hours. Jinwoo. The phone slipped from my fingers, clattered on the concrete floor.
Child.
Son. The words detonated in my mind like grenades, blowing apart everything I thought I understood. Sasha. Kyung-jin's voice came from somewhere distant. Sasha, breathe. But I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the roaring in my ears and the memories that were crashing through the fractures in my mind like a dam finally, catastrophically breaking. A pregnancy test. 2 lines. My hands shaking as I stared at it. Kyung-jin's face, shocked and then lit with joy so fierce it hurt to see. We're having a baby. We can't tell anyone. Not yet. Not until I handle your father. A nursery, painted soft gray. A crib I'd assembled myself. The smell of baby powder and the sound of tiny breaths.
A boy.
Dark hair, eyes that would be Kyungjin's. Small fingers wrapped around mine with impossible strength. Jiho, I whispered. The name surfaced like something buried deep underwater, finally breaking the surface. His name is Jiho. Kyungjin's face had gone pale, frozen in an expression I couldn't read. What did you say? Our son. His name is Jiho. I pressed my hands to my temples, trying to hold the memories together as they threatened to scatter. He was 3 months old when I went to the clinic. I left him with the memory fractured. I left him somewhere safe. Somewhere you couldn't find him. Because if the Choi clan discovered you had a son, they'd use him as leverage. You had our baby. His voice was barely audible. You erased yourself and our baby from your own memory. To protect him. To protect you both. The full horror of it crashed over me. But if Jinwoo knows about him, then he found where you hid him. Kyungjin's expression transformed from shock to cold, lethal rage. He found our son, and he's using him as bait. I grabbed his arm. We have to get him back.
Now.
Forget Incheon. Forget the files. No. His hand covered mine, squeezed hard enough to anchor me. That's exactly what they want. You, desperate and exposed, trading the only leverage you have for a child they might have already. He stopped, couldn't finish the sentence. Don't. My voice cracked. Don't say it. He pulled out his phone, made a call. When someone answered, he spoke in rapid Korean, his tone clipped and commanding. When he hung up, his jaw was set with grim determination. I have people checking every location where a 3-year-old boy matching Jiho's description has been seen in the past 48 hours. Hospital records, daycare centers, private residences connected to the Choi clan. He turned to face me fully. But we need to assume Jinwoo isn't bluffing. He has our son. The question is where, and whether he's working alone or if the Choi clan sanction this. Why would it matter? Because if he's gone rogue again, we can negotiate. We can trade, manipulate, extract. His expression darkened. But if Madame Choi authorized using a child as leverage, then she's already crossed a line the council won't forgive. We can use that. My hands were shaking again, but this time not from fear. From rage. From the maternal instinct that Ghost had tried to erase but couldn't, because some things were written deeper than memory. I'm going to kill him, I said, the words cold and certain. Jinwoo. I'm going to kill him for touching my son. Not if I get to him first. Kyungjin's smile was a predator's promise. But first we find Jiho. Then we make everyone who thought they could use him pay in ways that will echo through the syndicate for generations. His phone buzzed again. He answered, listened, his expression shifting from rage to sharp focus. When he hung up, he looked at me with something close to hope. My people found something. A property outside Seoul, registered to a shell company Jinwoo used 6 months ago. Remote.
Secured.
The kind of place you'd keep something or someone you didn't want found. He grabbed my hand. We leave now. I followed him toward the exit, my body moving with the efficient purpose of someone who'd found their mission. The skills Ghost had left behind were waking up, one by one, and they were all pointing toward the same objective. Get my son back. And destroy anyone who stood in the way. The shooting range felt like a lifetime ago. The woman who'd been uncertain, afraid, questioning, she was gone. In her place stood someone harder. Someone who'd burned herself away to protect the people she loved and was now clawing back to life to save them. Ghost wasn't fully resurrected yet, but the mother was. And she was going to war. The safe house sat 30 kilometers outside Seoul, hidden behind overgrown trees and a rusted gate that looked abandoned but wasn't. Through the thermal scope, I counted 3 heat signatures inside. 2 adults. 1 small. That's him, I whispered, my voice breaking on the words. That's Jiho. Kyungjin's hand found mine in the darkness of the car. We'd been watching for 2 hours, cataloging patterns, vulnerabilities, the rhythm of the guards' rotations. The professional part of me, the part that was ghost, understood the necessity of patience. The mother in me wanted to storm the building and tear apart anyone between me and my son. The woman is a nurse, Kyungjin said quietly, his eyes still on the building. Jin-woo hired her to care for Jiho. My sources say she's civilian, not syndicate. Probably doesn't even know who the child really is. And the man? Jin-woo's cousin. Low-level muscle. Armed, but not particularly skilled. He lowered the scope, turned to face me. I can do this without bloodshed, without noise. But I need you to trust me. What's the plan? You stay here. I go in alone. He raised a hand when I started to protest. Listen to me. Jiho doesn't know you. To him, you're a stranger. But he might remember me from before. Babies remember faces, voices, even at 3 months. And even if he doesn't, I'm not the one who's been hunting him. I'm not the threat in his mind. The logic was sound. I hated it anyway. If we both go in, if we move aggressively, he'll be terrified. Traumatized. He's already been taken from wherever you hid him. Already been held by people he doesn't know. We need to make this extraction feel safe. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. You've kept him safe for 3 years by staying away. Trust me to bring him to you now. I wanted to argue. Wanted to insist on being there when my son was freed. But Ghost's tactical mind understood what the mother's heart resisted. Sometimes love meant standing back. 5 minutes, I said. If you're not out in 5 minutes, I'm coming in. His smile was brief, fierce. I'll be out in 3. He exited the car with the fluid silence of someone trained to be a ghost himself. I watched through the scope as he approached the building, bypassing the front entrance for a side window the guards had left partially open. Overconfident.
Sloppy.
They thought themselves hidden, safe. They were wrong. Kyungjin disappeared inside. I counted heartbeats, watching the thermal signatures. The 2 adults were on the ground floor. The small heat signature, Jiho, was upstairs in what must have been a bedroom. Movement. Kyungjin's signature appeared near the male guard. A brief struggle, then the guard's form slumped. Unconscious, not dead. The nurse started to move, probably hearing something, but Kyungjin intercepted her before she could reach for a phone or weapon. Another body falling, carefully controlled. 2 minutes. He moved upstairs. The door opened. I held my breath as his signature merged with Jiho's smaller one. Please don't be afraid. Please recognize him. Please. The thermal scope couldn't show me details, but I saw Kyungjin's form crouch down, staying low, non-threatening. Saw the smaller signature move toward him instead of away. Saw him lift the child carefully, protectively. 3 minutes. Kyungjin emerged from the building with Jiho wrapped in a blanket, the boy's head tucked against his shoulder. Even from this distance, I could see the careful way he moved, each step deliberate, shielding the child's view from the 2 unconscious bodies inside. I was out of the car before I could think, running toward them, every maternal instinct that had been suppressed for 3 years roaring to life. Kyungjin stopped a few feet away, and I got my first real look at my son. Dark hair, sleep must. Kyungjin's eyes, wide and uncertain. Small hands gripping the blanket. He was tiny, perfect, real in a way that shattered something in my chest. Jiho, I whispered.
He looked at me.
really looked. And I saw it, confusion, wariness, but underneath something else. Something that might have been recognition buried, so deep even memory erasure couldn't kill it. It's okay, Kyungjin murmured to him, his voice gentle in a way I'd never heard before. This is Yuriyama. She's been keeping you safe. She's been protecting you. Iyama? Jiho's voice was small, uncertain, the Korean word for mother coming out as a question. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Tears burned my eyes, but I forced them back. Children could sense fear, could sense instability. I needed to be strong for him, even as I was breaking inside. I know you don't remember me, I said softly, crouching down to his level while Kyungjin still held him. And that's okay. We have time. All the time you need. Jiho studied me with the serious intensity of a child who'd learned too young that the world wasn't safe. Then, slowly, he reached out one small hand toward my face. I stayed still, barely breathing, as his fingers touched my cheek. Exploring. Testing. You're crying, he said. Happy tears. I caught his hand gently, pressed a kiss to his palm. Because I finally get to see you. Something in his expression softened. Maybe he didn't remember me consciously, but bodies remembered things minds forgot. Maybe some part of him knew that I was safe, that I was home, that I would burn the world down before I let anyone hurt him again. Can we go home now? He asked, looking between me and Kyungjin. I don't like this place. Yes. Kyungjin's voice was rough with emotion. We're going home. All three of us. Together. He shifted Jiho in his arms, and our son, settled against his chest with the trust of a child who'd found his father. Then Jiho reached out his other hand toward me, and I took it, lacing my fingers through his impossibly small ones. We walked back to the car like that, connected, a unit that had been fractured and was now fusing back together through sheer force of will and love too stubborn to be erased. In the car, Jiho fell asleep between us, his head on Kyungjin's shoulder, his hand still holding mine. I watched him breathe, this miracle I'd created and forgotten, this piece of my heart I'd cut out to keep safe. We need to move quickly, Kyungjin said quietly, his eyes on the road. Jinwoo will know we took him. The Choi clan will escalate. Let them. My voice was steel wrapped in silk. I have what matters most. Now I'm getting the weapon to protect it. Incheon. Incheon. I looked down at Jiho, at this perfect, vulnerable reason why Ghost had to fully resurrect. But first, we get him somewhere safe. Somewhere not even the council can reach. I have a place. Off the grid. Protected. Kyungjin's jaw tightened. My mother's family estate. The old matriarch hates my father, hates the syndicate politics. She'll protect Jiho with her life. And then you and I go to war. His smile was dangerous, beautiful, the expression of a man who'd found his purpose. We retrieve the files. We destroy the Choi clan. We remake the council on our terms. And we make sure our son grows up in a world where no one will ever dare use him as leverage again. I leaned over Jiho's sleeping form, kissed Kyungjin with a fierceness that tasted like promise and violence and love too dangerous to be safe. Ghost is coming back, I whispered against his lips. And she's going to teach them why you never threaten a mother's child. In his sleep, Jiho's hand tightened around mine. We drove through the night, a family forged in fire and memory and the stubborn refusal to let the past stay buried. The council had made a mistake. They'd given us something to fight for. The ambush came 15 kilometers from the matriarch's estate, on a stretch of empty highway where the streetlights had been systematically disabled. 3 black SUVs materialized from nowhere, boxing us in with precision that spoke of professional planning. Kyungjin's eyes flicked to the rear-view mirror, his jaw tightening. They knew our route, he said, his voice controlled but lethal. Someone on the inside sold us out. In the back seat, Jiho stirred but didn't wake. I twisted in my seat, assessing. 6 men per vehicle, judging by the silhouettes. 18 total.
Armed. Trained.
The Choi clan's best. Can we outrun them? Not without risking Jiho. His hands were steady on the wheel. They'll shoot out the tires, force a crash. They want you alive for the files, but they won't care if we flip at high speed. The lead SUV's window rolled down. A rifle barrel emerged. Everything happened in slow motion. The shot. The windshield spiderwebbing. Kyungjin swerving. Our car fishtailing on wet asphalt. Jiho waking with a frightened cry. My body moving on instinct, unbuckling, throwing myself over him as Kyungjin fought for control. We spun. Hit the guardrail. The impact was brutal, whiplash violent, throwing me against the door. Pain exploded in my shoulder, hot, sharp, spreading. When I looked down, I saw blood blooming across my shirt.
Shot.
I'd been shot. Sasha. Kyungjin's voice came from somewhere distant. Stay with me. But I wasn't Sasha anymore. The pain didn't matter. The blood didn't matter. What mattered was the 3-year-old crying beneath me and the men advancing on our disabled vehicle with weapons raised. Something inside me that had been locked away, suppressed, deliberately destroyed. It detonated. The erasure hadn't killed Ghost. It had caged her. And now the cage was shattering. My body moved before conscious thought. I grabbed the Glock from Kyungjin's shoulder holster, checked the magazine, chambered around. Muscle memory, so deep it bypassed the parts of my brain that had been burned away. Stay down, I told Jiho, my voice cold and utterly calm. Close your eyes and count to 10. Don't look up until Appa tells you. Sasha. Kyungjin started. It's not Sasha anymore. I met his eyes, and he must have seen something there, because he nodded once, understanding. Get him out. I'll handle this. I kicked open my door and rolled out into the road, using the car as cover. The pain in my shoulder was there, distant, acknowledged, irrelevant. 3 men approached from the right.
2 from the left.
The rest hanging back, confident in their numbers. Mistake. The first man made it 3 steps before I put 2 rounds center mass. He went down. The second hesitated, fatal in a gunfight, and caught one to the throat. The third dove for cover behind the lead SUV. I moved. Not running, but flowing, each step calculated for maximum efficiency and minimum exposure. The training Ghost had spent years perfecting was waking up, each neural pathway lighting up like a city emerging from blackout. A man rounded the SUV. I was already there, inside his guard. Elbow to his trachea, crushing it. His weapon clattered. I took it, a submachine gun, 30-round magazine, and used him as a human shield as his partners opened fire. The bullets meant for me tore into their own man. I dropped him and fired in controlled bursts. 3-round groupings. Professional. Lethal. For more down in as many seconds. Someone was screaming orders in Korean. I understood every word. Understood their tactics, their training, the way they'd been taught to move and shoot. I'd been trained better. I flanked left, using the damaged guardrail as cover. 2 men were trying to circle behind our car, trying to get to Jiho. That was the mistake that killed them. I rose from cover, fired twice. Both dropped. Reload. The motion was automatic. Eject magazine. Insert fresh one. Chamber round. 2 seconds flat. The remaining assassins were retreating now, realizing they'd walked into an execution, not an ambush. One tried to radio for support. I shot the device out of his hand, then put one through his kneecap.
He'd live. Barely.
But he'd talk. The leader, I could tell by his positioning, by the way the others deferred, raised his hands. Smart. Survival instinct. Madam Choi sent you, I said. Not a question. He nodded slowly, his eyes wide. He was looking at me like I was a ghost. Appropriate. Tell her something for me. I walked toward him, the submachine gun steady in my hands despite the blood still seeping from my shoulder. Tell her that Ghost remembers everything now. Tell her the files are mine, the leverage is mine, and if she comes near my family again, I won't just destroy her clan. I'll erase it so thoroughly that in 10 years, no one will remember the Choi name existed. You're bleeding, he said, his voice shaking. I've bled before. I gestured to his SUV. Take your dead and wounded.
Leave.
And deliver my message. He ran. The silence after the gunfire was absolute. I stood in the middle of the highway, surrounded by bodies and spent brass casings, and felt the final pieces of Ghost lock into place. The headaches were gone. The confusion was gone. I remembered everything. Every mission. Every kill. Every moment of the life I'd burned away. Every moment with Kyungjin. Every whispered promise. Every plan we'd made for a future that included the son I'd died to protect. Behind me, I heard a car door open. Kyungjin's voice, soft and careful. It's over, Jiho. You can look now. I turned. Kyungjin stood with our son in his arms, both of them staring at me. Jiho's eyes were wide, but not with fear.
With awe.
Yama is strong, he said. Yes. Kyungjin's gaze held mine, and in it I saw recognition, pride, love for the woman I'd been and the woman I'd become.
She is
the strongest person I know. I walked back to them, my steps steady despite the blood loss, despite the pain I was now allowing myself to feel. When I reached them, Jiho touched my face again, his small fingers gentle against my cheek. You're bleeding, he said, echoing the assassin's words, but with concern instead of fear. I'm okay. I kissed his forehead, leaving a smear of cordite and violence on his innocent skin. I'll always be okay, because I have you to protect. Kyungjin pulled out his phone with his free hand, made a call. We need extraction. Medical.
Now.
He gave our coordinates, then hung up and looked at me with an expression that was equal parts concern and relief. Ghost. Ghost, I confirmed. Not Sasha. Not anymore. The woman who'd run into that bar terrified and confused was gone. In her place stood the operative who'd been the syndicate's most valuable asset and most dangerous enemy. Welcome back, he said softly. I smiled, feeling the ruthless edge of it. Let's go get our weapon and end this. In the distance, sirens wailed. But they were too late. The ghost had already risen. And she was going hunting. The bullet had passed through clean. Muscle damage, nothing vital. The penthouse's private doctor stitched me up with the efficient silence of someone who'd learned not to ask questions, then left me with antibiotics and instructions I'd ignore. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, watching Seoul's lights sprawl beneath me like a kingdom waiting to be claimed. My shoulder throbbed with each heartbeat, a reminder that Ghost was mortal, but mortality had never stopped me before. Jiho was safe. Delivered to the matriarch's estate where armed guards who owed no loyalty to the council would die before letting anyone through. That security bought me the clarity to think, to plan, to become what I'd spent 3 years running from. The woman who didn't hide from power. She took it. Behind me, Kyungjin entered with 2 glasses of whiskey. He'd shed his blood-stained shirt, the dragon on his torso visible in the low light. The same scales that had held our secrets now a map to everything we needed. Jiho's settled, he said, handing me a glass. My grandmother is telling him stories about his ancestors. He's enchanted. He should be terrified. He saw me kill 4 men tonight. He saw his mother protect him. Kyung-jin moved to stand beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. There's a difference. He's young enough that the violence won't scar him if we're careful. If we make him understand that strength isn't cruelty. I took a sip of whiskey, felt it burn down my throat. We can't keep running.
Can't keep reacting.
Every move we've made since I crashed into the Onyx Lounge has been defensive. What are you proposing? Offense. I turned to face him fully. We stop hiding from the council. We walk into it and take control. His eyes darkened with understanding and something that looked dangerously close to pride. The files. The files are the nuclear option. Mutually assured destruction. Every council member knows that if those files go public, the entire syndicate collapses. The Japanese Yakuza will know your father sold them compromised intelligence. The Korean government will know which politicians are on the payroll. International law enforcement will have enough evidence to dismantle 3 generations of carefully built power. So we threaten to release them unless they comply.
No.
I set my glass down, my mind moving through scenarios with the tactical precision that was pure ghost. Threats only work if they're willing to lose everything to call your bluff. The council has survived for 50 years by being willing to sacrifice anything to maintain power. If we threaten them, they'll come at us with everything. Not because they're brave, but because they're desperate. Then what? We don't threaten. We offer. I moved to the desk, pulled out paper and pen, old school, untraceable, and began sketching the power structure. 5 families. 5 council seats. 5 different vulnerabilities. We give them what they want more than security. We give them advantage over their enemies. Kyung-jin leaned over my shoulder, watching as I mapped the connections, the alliances, the feuds that ran generations deep. You want to play them against each other. I want to make them need us. I circled 3 names. The Park clan, the Kim clan, and the Lee clan are your father's biggest rivals. They've spent years looking for leverage against him. We give it to them. Carefully curated evidence that proves his betrayal without exposing their own crimes. They'll move against him immediately.
Exactly.
And in the chaos of succession, we position you as the rational choice. The son who discovered his father's treason and brought it to the council's attention. The loyal soldier who put syndicate before family. His jaw tightened. You want me to kill him. I want you to survive him. I turned, met his eyes. Your father made his choice when he sold out to the Yakuza. He chose money over honor, power over family. The council will execute him themselves once they see the evidence. All you have to do is not stand in their way. And the Choi clan? I smiled, cold and predatory. Madam Choi gets special treatment. We give her a choice. Step down voluntarily, transfer leadership to someone we approve, and retire with her life and a portion of her wealth intact. Or we release every file we have on her, and I made sure to document thoroughly. The human trafficking, the forced labor, the children. Kyung-jin's expression hardened. Children. She's been running an adoption ring. Selling infants to wealthy families, some legitimate, some not. It's how she found Jiho. She has contacts in every hospital, every clinic, every place where vulnerable children exist. The rage in my voice was controlled, but absolute. I documented everything before I erased myself. Names, dates, payments. Enough to put her away for life in a black site prison where syndicate connections mean nothing. The council won't protect her if that goes public. They'll throw her to the wolves to avoid the scandal. I marked another name, which leaves the Song clan and the Beck clan. Both neutral, both pragmatic. We approached them with a proposal. We have evidence that could destroy the council, but we're willing to secure it permanently in exchange for a seat at the table. A seat for who?
Me.
The word hung between us, audacious and absolute. Not as your wife. Not as your asset. As Ghost. The syndicate's premier intelligence operative, now offering her services exclusively to the council under very specific terms. Kyung-jin stared at me, and I watched him process the full scope of what I was proposing. Not revenge. Not destruction. Conquest. You want to become the sixth seat, he said slowly. I want to remake the council entirely. 5 families isn't sustainable, too easy to deadlock, too vulnerable to personal feuds. But 6? With the right balance of power? With someone who holds the evidence, but has no generational claim to defend. I moved closer to him. I become the tiebreaker. The neutral party. The one they need to maintain equilibrium. They'll never accept an outsider. They'll accept someone who can end them. My hand pressed against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath the dragon's scales. And they'll accept the Park clan's head vouching for her. The man who turned in his own father, who married the woman who saved the syndicate from collapse. This is insane. This is the only way we survive long-term. Jiho needs to grow up in a world where no one will touch him, where his parents aren't targets but architects of the system. I leaned in closer. We don't hide from power, Kyung-jin. We take it. We reshape it. We make it serve us. He was quiet for a long moment, his mind working through scenarios, probabilities, risks. Finally, he smiled. Dangerous, beautiful, the expression of a man who'd found his match. When do we meet with the council? 48 hours. We retrieve the files from Incheon tomorrow. Spend the next day preparing the presentation, determining exactly what each council member sees and when. We control the narrative completely. And if they refuse, then we release everything and watch the syndicate burn. I kissed him, fierce and claiming. But they won't refuse. Because I'm not giving them a threat. I'm giving them a queen's gambit. A sacrifice that wins the game. Not a sacrifice. I pulled back, met his eyes. An investment. We give up the weapon to gain the throne. And once we're there, we make sure no one can ever threaten our family again. Outside the window, Seoul glittered with possibility and danger. Somewhere in that sprawl of light and shadow, the council was scrambling, trying to contain the ghost they thought they'd killed. They were about to learn they hadn't killed her. They'd created something far more dangerous. A mother with nothing left to lose and everything worth fighting for. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings, dark wood panels imported from centuries-old Korean temples, a circular table where 5 families had decided the fate of the syndicate for 3 generations. The chairs were throne-like, positioned to make anyone standing before them feel small, judged, powerless. I walked in like I owned the room. Kyung-jin entered beside me, carrying a steel briefcase that contained everything we'd retrieved from Incheon. The files, the recordings, the evidence that could dismantle an empire. His father sat in the Park clan seat, his face a mask of controlled fury. Madame Choi occupied her chair with regal contempt, her eyes promising slow death. The other 3 heads, Kim, Lee, Song, watched with calculating neutrality. No one spoke as we approached the center of the circle. You have 5 minutes to justify this intrusion, Min-jun Park said, his voice cold. Before I have you both removed and disappeared. Try. I set my own briefcase on the table, leather, expensive, chosen for effect. But you should know that if I don't send a specific code to 3 separate parties within the next 12 hours, every file I stole goes public. International media. Law enforcement. Your competitors. Everyone. Madame Choi leaned forward, her smile vicious. Empty threats from a ghost who should have stayed dead. Not empty. Specific. I opened my briefcase, withdrew a tablet, and activated the screen. Let's start with you, Madame Choi. This is a recording from 6 months ago. Your conversation with Jean Woo about the special merchandise you've been moving through Busan. Her smile faltered as her own voice filled the chamber, cold and transactional. The infant market is expanding. Americans will pay premium for Korean babies, especially ones without paperwork. Make sure the mothers are untraceable. I don't want complications. The silence that followed was absolute. That's fabricated, Madame Choi said, but her voice had lost its certainty. The digital signature is authentic. I made sure of that. I swiped to the next file. But if you need more proof, I have bank records. 18 accounts in 6 countries. Payments to hospitals, clinics, corrupt officials. Names, dates, amounts. Enough evidence to put you in a black site prison for the rest of your life. Chairman Kim spoke for the first time, his voice measured. If this is true, Madame Choi has violated the oldest rule of the syndicate. We do not traffic children. She also violated the second oldest rule, I continued, turning to Minjun Park. We do not betray the syndicate to outside organizations. I pulled out another file, slid it across the table to Chairman Lee. Minjun Park has been selling intelligence to the Yamaguchi-gumi for 3 years. Troop movements. Safe house locations. The identities of undercover operatives. Minjun's face went white. That's a lie. It's documented. Kyungjin spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the weight of filial betrayal. Bank transfers from Yakuza-affiliated accounts to shell companies my father controls. Encrypted communications. Meeting records. I verified everything myself before bringing it to this council. Chairman Song leaned back in his chair. You're accusing your own father of treason. I'm presenting evidence of it. Kyungjin's expression was carved from stone. The Park clan serves the syndicate. When the head betrays that service, he forfeits his position. That's our law. Minjun stood, his hand moving toward his jacket. 2 of Kyungjin's men materialized from the shadows, weapons drawn. The other council members' guards responded in kind, the room suddenly bristling with lethal potential. Everyone sit down, Chairman Lee commanded, his voice cutting through the tension.
Now.
Slowly, reluctantly, Minjun lowered himself back into his seat. The guards remained ready. Chairman Lee fixed me with a stare that could have frozen blood. You've made your accusations. What do you want? A new arrangement. I straightened, letting Ghost's cold confidence fill every word. First, Madame Choi steps down immediately. The Choi clan will be absorbed into the Lee clan under new leadership, someone who understands that children are not merchandise. Madame Choi herself will be exiled to a location of the council's choosing, with limited resources and permanent surveillance. You presume to dictate council decisions? Madame Choi hissed. I'm negotiating the price of my silence. I met her gaze, without flinching. You attempted to use my son as leverage. You authorized Jean Woo to hunt me, to medicate me, to extract information through psychological torture. You violated the fundamental compact of the syndicate, that family is sacred. Your removal is not a demand. It's justice. Chairman Kim nodded slowly. Continue. Second, Minjun Park is removed from his seat. Kyungjin assumes leadership of the Park clan with immediate effect. Minjun will be dealt with according to syndicate law for treason. I didn't look at Kyungjin, didn't let myself see the cost of what I was demanding. His assets will be divided, half to the council as reparations, half retained by the Park clan to maintain stability. And third, Chairman Song asked. Third, I want formal recognition. Not as an outsider, not as someone's wife, but as an independent operator with council protection. Ghost becomes a sanctioned asset, available for contract work at rates I set, with absolute autonomy over which jobs I accept. I pulled out the final document, the one I drafted with meticulous care. In exchange, all evidence I've gathered remains secured in a location only I can access. The files become insurance for my family's safety, released only if we're harmed. You want a seat at the table without the burden of clan leadership, Chairman Lee observed. I want protection for my family and the freedom to operate without looking over my shoulder. I placed my hand on my stomach, a gesture I'd planned carefully. I'm pregnant. My second child. Jiho is safe now, but this one deserves to grow up without being a target. That requires restructuring the power dynamics that made us vulnerable in the first place. The council members exchanged glances, having silent conversations in the language of decades-old alliances and rivalries. Chairman Kim spoke first. The charges against Madam Choi are substantiated. I vote for her removal and exile. Chairman Song nodded. Agreed. The child trafficking violates our fundamental principles. Chairman Lee's expression remained neutral. Minjun Park's treason is also clear. The Yakuza connection cannot be tolerated. I vote for his removal and execution. Minjun surged to his feet again. You can't. Sit down, father. Kyungjin's voice was quiet, final. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. The vote was unanimous. For council members, one verdict. Chairman Lee turned to me. Your terms are acceptable with modifications. You'll have council protection, but you will also be bound by council law. Any operation you undertake cannot compromise syndicate interests. You report your activities quarterly, and the files remain secured as you described, but you will provide the council with a partial access key, enough to verify their existence, but not enough to retrieve them. Agreed. Then we have terms. Chairman Lee stood, and the other members followed. Madam Choi, you are hereby expelled from this council. Your assets are forfeit. You have 24 hours to leave Korean territory. Madam Choi's face was a mask of impotent rage as guards, now loyal to the remaining council, escorted her from the chamber. Minjun was taken next, his expression one of disbelief and hatred focused entirely on his son. Kyungjin watched him go with the blank detachment of a man who'd already mourned. When the chamber cleared, leaving only the 4 remaining council heads and us, Chairman Kim smiled slightly. You're either brilliant or insane, Ghost. Both, I said. That's why you need me. We left the council chamber together, Kyungjin's hand finding mine as we walked into the Seoul morning. Behind us, the syndicate was already reshaping itself around the new reality we'd forced into existence. Are you really pregnant? He asked quietly. I pressed his hand to my stomach. 3 weeks. I found out yesterday. His expression cracked, showing the emotion he'd kept locked away during the confrontation. Another child. Another target. Another reason to make sure we've built something unbreakable. I pulled him close, feeling his heartbeat against mine. We did it. We're free. We're council adjacent, he corrected. We're protected. We're powerful. But we're never truly free. Then we'll settle for protected and powerful. I kissed him, tasting relief and victory and the future we'd fought to claim. And we'll raise our children to be stronger than the system that tried to break us. Above us, Seoul sprawled in every direction, a city of shadows and light, danger and possibility. Somewhere in that vast expanse, Jiho was learning stories about ancestors who'd built empires. Soon, he'd have a sibling. Soon, our family would be complete. Ghost had risen. Ghost had conquered. And now, finally, Ghost could rest. And there it is, my fierce hearts. Sasha, no, Ghost, went from a terrified woman running through rain-soaked streets to the most powerful player in the Seoul Syndicate. She didn't just survive. She didn't just remember. She transformed her trauma into a throne and her pain into power. This story hit different, didn't it? Because it wasn't just about a mafia romance or a revenge plot. It was about a woman who loved so deeply she erased herself to protect the people who mattered. It was about a mother who clawed her way back from oblivion when her child needed her. It was about two people who refused to let a corrupt system destroy their family, so they burned it down and rebuilt it on their own terms. Kyung-jin gave up his father. Ghost gave up her anonymity. Together, they gave up safety for something far more valuable: agency. The power to protect what they love without permission, without apology, without compromise. That's the kind of love that doesn't just survive. It rewrites the rules. If this story grabbed you by the throat and didn't let go, if you're sitting there thinking about Sasha's journey from the Onyx Lounge to the council chamber, if you felt that moment when Ghost finally, fully remembered who she was, then I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button. We're building something special here, a community of people who understand that dark romance isn't about toxicity. It's about characters strong enough to survive impossible choices and still choose love. Smash that like button if Ghost's resurrection gave you chills. If that shooting range scene made you sit up. If you whispered yes when she walked into that council chamber and took what was hers. Drop a comment and tell me, what was your favorite moment? Was it the dragon tattoo reveal? The moment Sasha met Jiho? That highway ambush where Ghost exploded back to life? Or maybe it was the final confrontation when she dictated terms to the most powerful people in the syndicate. I want to know what hit you hardest. Share this video with someone who loves redemption arcs, protective parents, power couples who are genuinely equal partners, or morally complex characters who make impossible choices and own the consequences. And here's the thing. My Midnight Dreamers, Ghost and Kyung-jin's story doesn't have to end here. If you want to see what happens next, if you want to know how they navigate council politics, how Jiho and his sibling grow up in this world, how Ghost handles being the most dangerous woman in Seoul while raising a family, tell me in the comments. If there's enough love for these characters, we might just have to revisit them. Before you go, let me leave you with this. You are not defined by what's been taken from you. Not by the trauma. Not by the people who tried to break you. Not by the parts of yourself you had to sacrifice to survive. Like Ghost, you can rise from those ashes. You can reclaim your power. You can rewrite the story they tried to force on you. Sometimes love means running into the rain. Sometimes it means burning away the person you were. And sometimes it means walking into a room full of people who want you dead and making them give you exactly what you deserve. Until next time, stay fierce, stay fearless, and remember, the best revenge isn't surviving. It's thriving.
Subscribe,
Like,
comment, share.
see you in the next dangerous love story.